Yes.
Matter of speaking. Well, welcome and thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate your being here on this rainy night. My name is Susan Crawford. This is Mark Blum will be your moderator. Next to him is Ben Crawford. And next to Ben is Patty Barker. They will be the timekeepers. When the time is coming to an end, there'll be a cautionary yellow.
Hold on. This one next.
Yeah.
15 seconds or 30.
30 seconds and 15. 15.
Okay,
And
so
he's gonna tell me when, I won't do it just any time. And then,
that's the caution light. What is
well,
the
that's a stop one.
Okay, and they're
Yeah, this was.
stop. Okay.
That's what Ben did at the other speaker.
Okay, so I will get to the point and turn it over to the moderator in just a second, but first I'd like to introduce everybody. Our cast here, we have Maria Alexander, hello, Shannon Hillard, Rebekah Cohen Morris, Christopher Henshaw, Tammie Bailey, this is still happening, Gerald Owens, Tom Owens, Andy Yeoman, Jessica Killingsworth, and Danielle Brown, who is not here, but I can vouch for her. She's great. She's on the Planning Commission. Okay, so here's the way it's going to go. We'll start with each of you having 1 minute to introduce yourselves. Start at one end or the other. Each person will have 1 minute to introduce himself or herself, and then we will go into the questions, which I will be going through during that call. If at any time you're moved to write a question you want answered, write it down, stick it in there. I'll be going through it for redundancy's sake, so we don't have 5 people asking exactly the same question in different words. Start at one end. If we start, say, with Maria, she'll have 1 minute, and it's her turn to go first to respond, and then we'll go down the line. People can respond if they choose. Keep it as short as possible because obviously we have a lot of people and a lot of questions. If you don't have something really to say, just pass. Say I pass, and you will not lose any points. Save up your time. At the end, you'll each have 2 minutes to wrap up and say whatever you'd like to say about yourself. And what you're doing, why you're doing it, what you hope to accomplish and see. So 2 minutes on that, and then we go into questions and answers. Phil, do you have a question already?
Written questions, ad hoc questions, and then a summary.
No, not quite. Summary first, the wrap up, and then we're gonna go to Q&As from the audience. Just ad hoc, just raise your hand if you have a question. Remember, these people are here because they're good people, they wanna help the city. And also remember, keep in mind that the biggest phobia in the United States is public speaking. This isn't easy for anybody, including me, so I'm gonna get off the stage. This is Mark Blum, he will be the moderator. Please turn off your cell phones.
Thank you. Okay, each candidate gets, I think we said about 90 seconds according, we can make it 2 minutes, okay? We've got 9 people here, that'll be about 18 minutes. Just tell us who you are and what your platform is and what you'd like to accomplish. And let's start with Maria.
Okay, I'm Maria Alexander. I'm running for City Council of District 3. I'm a resident of Oak Cliff Estates. I've been a resident of Oak Cliff Estates since 1997. However, I grew up in the Doraville area, mainly in the neighborhood of Northwoods. I was on City Council from 2007 to 2015. took a hiatus because I, taking hand signals from the back. Took a hiatus because I had received a promotion to my job and wasn't gonna be able to devote the time to the city that I knew was necessary. So now I've changed positions, got a new job, and I'm looking forward, and would appreciate the opportunity to serve the city again. Thank you.
Shannon Hillard.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Shannon Hillard. I am your current District 3 representative, and I'm over in the Oak Cliff Estates area. I'm currently on council. I've been a council member since January 1, 2016, and I'm looking to run again because I want to continue the growth that we have right now moving forward in the city. I'm a paralegal. I also have my real estate license. I've got my commercial as well as residential real estate license. And I look forward to continuing to serve you guys if you so choose. Thank you. Oh, and Maria and I did not share the outfit memo.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebekah Cohen Morris, and I'm running in District 2. I'm really excited about continuing the work of being a public servant, but first and foremost, I'm your neighbor. And then second, as the elected official, I want to serve you. As someone who wants to engage with you, that's one of my first things. We need to make sure that we have a lot of dialogue between us, the council, and the residents here. I want to make sure that we are doing more to spur our economic development, and I need to also ensure that we have more housing options for people. And there's people who have been here for 50, 60 years, and they've made Doraville the place that many of us have moved to, many of us have decided to stay, and we need to preserve the things that make Doraville and the place that we love, while also moving ahead and making authentic progress. I'm a high school teacher. I also have done a lot of work in the community with both the Latino and Asian American communities, and I just want to continue that service of serving you guys in this new role. Thank you.
Mr. Christopher.
Hello, I'm only Christopher when I'm in trouble. Chris is fine. I'm Chris Henshaw. First of all, there's a bunch of seats up front, and I know nobody likes to sit up front, but you're going to be up there for 2 hours in the back, so if you want to sit, please. My name's Chris Henshaw. I live in Northwoods. I've been here since 7 or 8 years now. I recently got married, have a kid. He's 2 now. I'm an architect. I have my own small business in Doraville. I just felt like there's a lot of synergy between what I do and I think what Doraville might need from a city council member. Oh, I'm running a District 2 special election, which is a 2-year seat. And that's about it. You'll learn more about me as we go through the questions.
Tammie?
Yes. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Tammie Bailey Fultz. I'm here with my husband, also Tony Fultz, Anthony. And we have been residents here of Doraville for the last 4.5 years. Originally from New Orleans, but love Doraville, love the culture, of course, coming from a place like New Orleans. But I've been a resident of the Atlanta metro area, specifically DeKalb, for more than 25 plus years. So I'm excited about the opportunity to run in terms of the office and all that it represents. I am a people person and one who believes in really speaking to the community. I love talking to, so getting around campaigning has been ideal for me, for a lot of people who I've been able to interface with personally and directly, and so I enjoy it. I'm a procurement consultant, and I help small businesses in terms of procurement opportunities, becoming suppliers, and also vendors for corporate and government entities.
Gerald?
Hello, I'm Gerald Owens. I am a resident of Doraville for the last 15 years. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. I have a background in business analytics. So I actually worked in cybersecurity for a while before I transitioned as a full-time realtor, which I practice pretty much every day. My family has an investment program where I'm from back in St. Louis, Missouri, so I kind of branched off of that. I'm in District 1. I live in Avery Park in the townhomes over there. And I moved to Doraville because I saw what Doraville could be. There's a ton of potential here that's untapped, and I'm just kind of tired of waiting around for it to be tapped into. So I represent a lot of diversity in Doraville that hasn't been spoken to, that doesn't have a voice, and that's why I'm running. And I love your support.
Tom? Go ahead.
I'm Tom Owens. Most of y'all know who I am. I don't need a microphone, I have a loud voice. I'm retired from the Army. I'm a Vietnam veteran, have ballast awards for my service in Vietnam, I want to read y'all's prepared statement. I've spent a lifetime of service to my country and looking forward to serve the citizens of Doraville. I will serve with honor and distinction by committing to transparency and honest debate. We might not always agree, but you always know where I stand. I will outline in detail in coming weeks the major issues that will transform Doraville in one of the best cities to do business in. And I want to clean up the blighted areas of Doraville and get rid of the boarding houses. And I'll tell you a few more things about me. I'm a member of the Sons of American Revolution. My great-grandfather fought in the Battle of Kings Mountain. Margaret Mitchell is my cousin, the Gone with the Wind author. And I've completed the Ironman in Hawaii. I've done a lot of things. I'm a Renaissance man. And they taught me in the Army, if you're always right, you never have to apologize. Who?
Andy Yeoman.
Sure, it's hard to follow that. My name is Andy Yeoman. I wasn't born here, wasn't raised here. I was born in a rural town. I was the first person in my family to go to college, first to go to graduate school. I come from a public school background. I went to a community college. This is where I started my education for $80 a class, not a credit hour, $80 a class, and working my way up through Fortune 50 companies. I own my own business, and today I work in information technology and telecommunications for a company. We do about $80 million a year in revenue, which for some extent is about 4 to 5 times larger than the city of Doraville. So I do have some experience in terms of managing larger budgets and projects. Tonight's not about the mayor's race. Tonight we have, in this election, we have a unique opportunity to elect 4 people on the city council, which is not something that happens a lot because just the way the terms run. So it's not about who's left or who's right or who's wrong. It's about who we are as a city, where we want to go, and how we can work together when we accomplish those goals. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Jessica.
Last but not least, my name's Jessica Killingsworth. My family's been in Doraville since 1947. I'm a CNC machinist, and I like to build things. But really what I'm seeing going on in Doraville is a problem with communication. You need to reconnect the people to their local government. I find that's really important. It's been lacking here. So that's why I'm running to represent District 2. I live in Gordon Heights, and pleasure to be here. Thank you for being here.
Okay, now we will move on to the section where we ask the candidates to speak to submitted questions. And
Mark,
yeah.
I moved the bowl and the question papers and the pencils over there so you don't have to march up in front of everybody, but please fill out some cards. Some back.
Okay, good. Let me, since we started with you first, we'll start with Jessica first, and we'll change the order around. So here's the question. I'll be happy to repeat it as needed. Economic development is key to Doraville's future. If elected, what would you do to further development without taking away from the Beehive character? Buford Highway character, or running businesses out because of much higher rent. So let me just repeat that. If elected, what would you do to further development without taking away from the Buford Highway character, or running businesses out because of much higher rents? Jessica?
First, you need to get rid of the many wholesale businesses that we have in Doraville. Is just making the whole area look bad. There's a lot of too much of the wholesale, and also I don't like the massage parlors either. I think it makes the neighborhood look bad. I think there's other things we can have there, but I understand they exist, they're here, but I don't think that we need any more of them. I think that we need to cut back on the wholesale. We need to definitely not open up any more foot massage parlors, and kind of try to keep it clean and get us going in the right direction for our city.
Thank you. Andy?
Sure, I think it breaks down into an incremental approach, and it starts with our zoning. One of the things I didn't mention in my beginning, I'm actually the current chairman of the city's Planning and Zoning Commission. Some of the work that we've done with the current council and the council before as well was very supportive of this, is cleaning up the zoning. From what I understand, prior to my moving to the city, There was kind of the wild west of the zoning on Beaufort Highway, which is why it looks today. There's not a lot of cohesive environment that's in the corridor today. But to answer the direct question in terms of what we do for economic development, it is important to make the city desirable. Make sure, as we're approaching, Beaufort Highway is our central business district. We don't really have a downtown. And it's important to make sure that we have a focus on commercial blight and the Kmart property and the Eagle property and some of those properties that we do see that negatively impact that. We talk about the Kmart property and the former Nexus. You know, it's nice if that ever develops, but it's sitting right next to the really terrible, ugly post office.
Yes.
And so there's bigger things that we have to focus on more than just microscopic development in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, would you like to speak to the economic development question?
Yeah, I think the number one priority in this city, whether I get elected or not, and I'm gonna push forward, is get rid of the illegal boarding houses in Doraville. I have them on my street. When my friends out of state come to see me and they go down the street and see all the cars, see the code enforcement won't do nothing about it, the police won't do nothing about it. I have on one of my streets, in Andy's district, 48 people living in one house, and they won't do nothing about it. And to Dunwoody doesn't have boarding houses, Shanley doesn't, and we need, you can talk all this business in Beaufort Highway, you get rid of them boarding houses, the property values will go up and we have more money to work with to help the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Gerald?
I'll pass, ready for the next question.
Okay. Tammie, your question about business development in Beaufort Highway.
Sure. As a business owner, I'm speaking to businesses all the time. And a couple of things that come to mind for me is in terms of economic development, I feel that a city needs to have a brand. What is the brand for Doraville? You have a lot of cities that you typically go in and you can quickly identify, readily identify, you know, what that city is about. And then going around and campaigning to so many homeowners here, a lot of people express about not wanting to necessarily be a cookie cutter, not wanting to have the plastic, but certainly keeping what we have that is working for Doraville, which is the unique quality of it, maintaining that. Yes, there are some opportunities, of course, to do some cleanup, but certainly we need to be attractive. And some of the things that we need to bring forth for Doraville is expressing and showing the things that are positive, such as having MARTA, the uniqueness of where we are in terms of Spaghetti Junction and in terms of the city. So we have a lot to offer, and I think that if we do a great job in our branding, that we can certainly develop that from the economic standpoint.
I'll take a stab at this. I think that we need kind of a multi-pronged approach. I think the first step is to go out to existing businesses in Doraville that have been here, that have been established, and find out what is working for them and what isn't working for them, why they're here, what is it that we can improve for them, and use those answers to then help attract new businesses, while at the same time forming outreach committees to bring either larger businesses for the new developments or smaller businesses for the existing properties, and working with them to find out what their needs are. And you know, if we can identify what is working currently and what isn't working, and resolve that through zoning issues, better planning, better permitting processes, smooth over some of the issues that people have with those, I think that businesses will be more willing to come to Doraville as opposed to us having to go get them.
Thank you. Rebekah?
Yes, so I really like what both of you said about brand and also just meeting with business owners. Something that I've been proposing is having roundtable discussions that will happen quarterly with business owners so that we can understand why is it that they originally came to Doraville, why is it that they have considered leaving. But I think that throughout that process, I've definitely heard things in my own campaigning is that permitting needs to be updated. It's really difficult when you come in and want to open up a business and you can't get a response from City Hall. So I plan to do things to try to update our permitting process. I want to make sure that we utilize the land we currently already own here in Doraville on the downtown property. We can sell off portions of it to spur the development here along MARTA, where we already have a connection, instead of waiting for Assembly to develop. And then we also need more housing. If we have more housing, we have more customers to go to these businesses, these bigger places like supermarkets or other chain shops that a lot of people say that we need. Those will come to Doraville.
Thank you. Shannon, your turn.
Yes, so since I've been campaigning, I've spoken to residents that a lot of them in our city do own their own business, and a lot of them are on Beaufort Highway. And what I've encountered is that unfortunately some business owners are leaving the city of Doraville due to our zoning and our permitting process. And I have heard that the permit process, the time that it takes for the business owner to get things done is damaging the growth that they're trying to do. So I think that we need to find ways that we can fix this and work better with our developers, with our business owners, with our residents and the community. That way we can continue to grow and run things in a smoother process.
Thank you, Maria.
It's not exactly a second because several people have mentioned it, but I also have heard that we have challenges in the permitting process, not just the time allotted to get a permit, but also some of the fees we charge seem to be a little out of line with our neighboring cities and could be hindering our economic development that way also. Beaufort Highway is a gem. I know people that come in from out of town just to eat at our restaurants, to shop at the Beaufort Highway Farmers Market. So that is something that we really need to advertise and promote. We also need to promote our connectivity to MARTA. It's not really broadcast on Beaufort Highway, and we don't really have easy connectivity to the MARTA stations. It's not easy to cross Beaufort Highway. We need more crossing signals and more pedestrian-friendly way, because I think the more you advertise how convenient mass transit is, the more people you're going to get coming to visit the city, and that in turn spur economic development.
Thank you. Okay, our second question is a two-part question, so I'm going to request the timekeepers, let's give them a little more time, have 90 seconds of it. So, and I'd like to start with, we're going to not ask the same person to start, and then each time, so I'll just stagger it. Gerald, I'd like you to start first, and I'll be happy to repeat the question as needed. Two-part question. Homes on my street have grass that is measured at 21 inches tall. Two homes, one consistently drive across their yard. Both are rental houses, the people who live in them. And what should the role of code enforcement be in helping to maintain neighborhoods and enforce, not fine, but enforce residents to follow the rules? And the second part of that question is, do rules even matter? So it's a question about lawns and driving across lawns and code enforcement. Gerald?
Those are great questions. Yes, rules absolutely do matter. I would say communication is the key when it comes to enforcing laws. So actually, if you see something, say something. That's the first step. And as neighbors, you have to definitely report if there's something out of line within your own neighborhood. I'm not sure if that's not happening, but that's one of the very first steps that can be taken, to let people know that there's an issue within your neighborhood, so that City Hall and the code enforcement is aware that there's a potential issue. And that way, maybe they can be cited, maybe there could be a warning letter sent out. And now you have a chain of command process that's happening to say, hey, you've had a warning, here's your second warning, here's your final warning, now here's a fine. But none of that issue, if none of that's currently happening, and now they're just being sent to court for something that they haven't even been told about, then therein lies in the communication or the lack thereof. So I think those are some of the steps that can be taken to improve upon that.
Thank you. Tammie?
Absolutely, I concur with Gerald here. Definitely in terms of rules need to be enforced. Whether you're in an HOA community as we are, we're on Stewart Court right off of Stewart Road, or if it's a neighborhood without the HOA, you still would like to have your properties, I mean, that's what you're a homeowner for. And even if you're not a homeowner, if you're renting, the person across from you, every day you're having to look at perhaps someone who has their car parked on the lawn, and you're abiding by all of the rules. So I think that having code enforcement is important. Of course, it has to be properly staffed, manned. It has to be a process in place in terms of reporting to make sure that there is follow-up and follow-through in the process, and making sure that the rules apply to everyone. It has to be clearly communicated, of course, and there are some steps and processes in terms of warning and things of that nature. However, we want to ensure that our neighborhoods look a certain way, and definitely having cars parked on the lawn having grass knee-high and all is totally unacceptable.
Thank you. Chris?
Apparently I'm gonna be Mr. Two-Prong approach tonight, so bear with me. I think we need, when owners become tenants or become landlords, they need to understand their obligations. And then we also need to make it clear for the tenants what their both rights are as tenants and as renters, and their obligations as renters. There are derelict houses, and tenants understanding their rights should be able to assert that the landlord repairs things and that the onus is not necessarily fully on the tenant. And again, that plays back to the owners also need to understand what it is that their obligations are. I've also tossed around the idea of, for simple items like mowing lawns, that the city issues a warning and then actually just performs the work and it gives them a bill, as opposed to continuing to fine for the same thing over and over again. Obviously, collecting a bill is a little bit of an issue, but it does, in the short term, fix the problem. There you go, that's one idea.
Thank you. Rebekah?
So I think this goes to a lot of different elements. First, many tenants don't know their rights, like Chris said, but they also don't know what the code is, and they don't even know that they're breaking code. So one thing that we need to be doing, and this is something I do in my community work already, is get that information in the language that they need it to be, so that they understand when trash day is and when, what inches, how high your lawn can be, etc. But also working with the landlords, I've had a lot of experience working with Brookhaven Code Enforcement, Chamblee, and Doraville, where tenants have a relationship with me. They call me and say, hey, this is happening, I have a big hole in my floor, oh, I have a leak, this tree is falling on my house. We work with the landlord, and if the landlord doesn't do something, we get code enforcement involved, and we teach tenants how to do this and train their neighbors as well. So most people don't want to live in a slum. They don't wake up and say, this is home sweet home. So I think we need to work with the tenants, but also I think that we need to make our permitting a little bit easier. So if you wanted to perhaps widen your driveway so you don't have to park on your grass, you should be able to figure out how to get that permit. I grew up in a household of 5 people. There were 5 cars. If our driveway had to only be 1 car length wide and only 2 car lengths long, there would have been problems. So I think that we need to make it a little bit more. We need to have working solutions for people when they want to do things the right way, in a aesthetically pleasing way as well.
Thank you. Shannon?
So my experience with this, when I first bought my house back in 2014, I didn't know that in order to have a garage sale, you had to have a permit. And it was as simple as my neighbor just walking down the street and saying, hey, by the way, did you know that you have to have a permit in order to have a garage sale? So I think if we could start small, even if you see that somebody has just moved in, even if you know that they're renters, just going over and saying, hey, by the way, here's X, Y, and Z that you need to know about the city. I also think that we need to have different languages, different flyers to go out in different languages, because I know in my neighborhood we've got Spanish, we've got Korean and Vietnamese and Bengali, and I don't think it's fair just to assume that these people know what our codes and regulations are. So I think that the city can do a better job of making it more accessible for our neighbors to find out what exactly the zoning and the codes are. And I think that code enforcement, instead of just going out and writing a ticket, if they could just go and say, hey, we see that you're new to Doraville, here's what our process is, here's what our code and here's what our zoning is, let's keep in touch.
Thank you. And finally, Maria?
I agree that communication is an issue. I know that the city used to have a printed version of the newsletter that went out, and it was sometimes lists items such as tall grass, things of that nature, and it would be in multiple languages. The city stopped doing a mailer and now is only communicating by the internet, and we're not reaching everyone, and I think that's an issue that if it's not too cost prohibitive, that we bring the written newsletter back, or as Ms. Hillard suggested, having the code enforcement have a flyer that they can hand out in multiple languages to educate the residents. And yes, rules do matter. And my concern when I hear about people driving across the grass is we've got old sewer lines and we don't want any of those to break in the city. So that's what I thought about driving across the grass. It's not just only aesthetics you have to be worried about.
Thank you. Jessica also got something for me.
Okay. This is
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Your turn. No, same question.
Can we restart my time?
Yes.
Great. This is exactly why we have a lawsuit going on in the city, is because we have a code enforcement that uses selective enforcement on people, and they don't apply it to everyone else. We have, some of the laws being applied to some people and our ordinance applied to some people while they're ignoring others that are blatantly violating the ordinances, and it's ridiculous. I feel like this is one of the main reasons why the city needs to hire a full-time building inspector. It goes into the same department. You can't just be enforcing the grass to some people being too high, the parking in driveways. I mean, I've actually seen this firsthand because I've had code enforcement come to my house when we had new gutters put on our roof, and they're harassing us about a leaf in our gutter in November. It's like, but the house down the street has got the tall grass and cars parked everywhere. I'm like, really? So yeah, that's the rules have to be followed, yes, and they have to apply to everyone, and they have to keep enforcing them to everyone, and it's not happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Sure. This is a no-win. I mean, 50% I've canvassed about 350 doors so far. I'm about a little less than halfway done. 50% of the people think the city has no code enforcement at all. And the other 50% think that the city is, overbearing and it's too much. I met with a guy in the Winters Chapel neighborhood. They got a ticket because he had a toilet in his driveway. It's a nice house. And he's like, well, I replaced my toilet on Sunday and I'm not gonna sit it in my living room. It's sitting on my porch. And eventually they'll pick it up. So, so yesterday, and I've taken it upon myself because I've known that I'll be knocking on a lot of doors and I'll probably be hitting Raymond Drive and Miss Brucker. So the last 2 months I've actually taken it amongst myself to go to the municipal court. And just yesterday, actually, in municipal court, they shut down 2 boarding houses. And the reason I went, there was one in my neighborhood, one on my street on Tilly Mill, that they've been trying to find the owner for 4 years. And they issued a bench warrant today because she still didn't show up. So I understand the issues that the city has. It's frustrating, but there's just no way to win it. I mean, half the people think that the city's not doing anything. And then you've got people like Tom and some of the issues that we have in our city, and we're like been there for 4 years and nothing's been done. It's whoever wrote the question that's got the 21-inch grass, obviously nothing's been done for that. So.
Thank you, Tom. You're up.
I agree with Andy. In fact, Andy, you got a blighted property across from your house. You aware of that? I see. Believe me. Yeah, you are. Which one? You just look out your door to the left. But getting rid of the boarding houses in Doraville is a priority. But I got the chief of police back here. They've been on my street, and neighbors in our neighborhood raise sheep and cattle in their houses. And they got loose, and the Doraville police come out there and wouldn't do nothing about it. And they couldn't catch them either. No sheep. It's funny. But there's a lot of illegal activity going on in Doraville. And let me tell you, come by my house and see my house. I take pride in my house. And so you can't complain about anybody until you take care of your own house. I have an excellent house, good, clean house. And we have problems on our street. We got our neighbors have raw sewage septic tanks. People got hepatitis C. And let me tell you another thing. A couple of years ago, the MS-13 gang was selling drugs in my front house. It was in the newspaper. There's more stuff going on in Doraville than people realize.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the third question, and I will start with Chris. And I'll make sure everyone gets it. We'll finish with Tammie, then next one we'll go in the other direction. So question number 3. How do you feel about adding speed bumps or other traffic calming methods on Chestnut, Raymond, and McClure Drive, I think it is, and I'm sure you could add any other streets you want. Speed bumps and traffic calming.
Thanks for picking me first. I could wax poetic about this for a day and a half. I think speed bumps are an effective means of controlling problems with speed. And I actually, most of you know, I had an issue with the speed bump that was in front of my house. It has been resolved to my satisfaction completely. I would like to avoid anything like that in the future from happening again, as it's not fair to homeowners, tenants, or anyone that lives in the neighborhoods. The biggest culprit actually on my street is the school buses, which I think Mario Andretti is the teacher at their school bus academy. They're the only ones that seem to not observe the speed bumps. But they are effective. Again, with proper engineering, proper planning, homeowner input, resident input would be great. Yeah, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth too further. So much further.
Thank you. And Susan has just instructed me or educated me. This was a question just for the Northwoods neighborhood. So
I'm a Northwoods resident, so that's appropriate.
The other Northwood residents and council members or candidates would please answer that. And I think Rebekah, you go ahead.
So I think, first of all, as we've seen with certain traffic calming devices in other parts of the city, perhaps a more robust community engagement process needs to happen. And then I also think we need to make sure that the engineering is done well. And then I think there needs to be a thorough review of this before we spend $1 million and then have to go back and remediate it for another $1 million and then have a phase 2 for another $1 million. So I think we need to do it right the first time. I think in some ways we need to first do a study where we can see how fast our cars going, but also we need to figure out perhaps having a police officer sit at a stop sign and ticket people for a little while. That could also do the trick in those neighborhoods. So I think that we need to do a lot of community input before we make a decision, but I'm open to the ideas, but based on community.
Thank you.
Yes.
Tammie, go ahead.
I too am in complete agreement about having community input. There's just not a one answer to that. And it definitely speaks, I think, with Chris in here and, when you're going through that process and trying to make a decision around if it's appropriate or not. I think there are a number of factors that need to be weighed. Certainly, you have to have the input of the people who is going to impact the most. And by all means, you want to get the input of the people who are there, who are experiencing it. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It is costly. Of course, it's even more costly if you have to go back and redo it. And so certainly having some studies done as well as some other options, and just making sure that people are aware of what all the options are. As you have people, now our city is kind of turning over in certain pockets. What may have worked for people at one point may not work for them in the future.
Thank you. Jessica?
Thank you. Chestnut is what you call a minor arterial, and it's the main route for emergency vehicles and fire trucks, ambulances to get into our neighborhood. So, it's the thing about the public input is when you ask some people on one side or people who live on Chestnut, they're like, no speed bumps, and my house is on Chestnut. And other people in the back streets, side streets, people who don't have to deal with them every day are gonna be like, oh, well, we need speed bumps. And, it's just a game of wherever they're trying to think of putting them. There are things that are other options I think on Chestnut would be better, such as the obvious one, which would be like more neighborhood policing, but also the speed cameras in school zones. We were supposed to have a school zone, one of the flashing lights there with the hours of the school, and a crossing guard right there at the church on Chestnut. And it's not there. I think if we put the light there, if we put the cameras there, caught the people speeding, more neighborhood policing, it would impact, the word would get around and people would stop, blowing through the stop signs and whatnot. Stopping.
Okay, I think we got all the Northwoods candidates, right? Here is one for everyone, and I'll start with Shannon, and we'll go this way. Okay, so Maria, you'll be the final one to answer this one. What can you do to bring a Kroger, Publix, or other mainstream grocery store to Doraville, assuming you think that's a good idea?
Dear God, I think everybody has asked me this question while campaigning. I'm well aware that we all would like a Publix in our neighborhood. I think it's something that we definitely need to bring to our city because we are large enough, and I think everybody in my neighborhood has to go either to Chamblee Tucker, to that Kroger, or to the Walmart all the way in Chamblee, and I think it's ridiculous. I think we need to work with a developer and find some way to get a Publix and or Kroger into our city.
Thank it would be to you.
So I think this goes back to kind of what I was talking about with economic development, that when you have more density in housing, and not necessarily all in the same corner, but just growing the number of people that live in Doraville, these companies, as they're doing their studies about where to relocate, they will open it once they think that it has the market potential, and a lot of that is based on the number of people that live here. So I think that we need to think about that and get more housing so that we can do that. But I also think we need to think of our area as a network, a community. So Whole Foods is in Chamblee. Brookhaven does not have a Whole Foods. They drive 1 mile over to the Whole Foods in Chamblee. So I think in some ways making sure that it's easier to get around, that we can access these stores that are literally 1 or 2 miles away. I think in the meantime it's good, but once we get the density, I think that we can have a Publix or a Kroger or a neighborhood grocery store.
Thank you. Chris?
Growth like that needs to be organic. Density is obviously exceptionally important. Nobody can force a company as large as Publix to put a store where they don't want to put one. They're gonna spend more money on studies than Doraville will spend on everything to make sure that they're putting their stores in the correct location. Additionally, the character of Buhai doesn't necessarily fit the model of what a Kroger or Publix is going to want, but perhaps the new developments, when they happen, where they happen, those are going to be the locations that might be able to attract a more mainstream store like a Publix. I mean, Beaufort Highway Farmers Market is an untapped resource that most people don't know about, and they may continue to not know about it, but if we want something more mainstream, that Beaufort Highway isn't the corridor for it. Additional growth and density through other developments will bring those in time, I believe.
Thank you. Tammie?
Yes, I'm definitely in favor of a national supermarket brand, whether it's Kroger, Publix, or perhaps even a Target. I think that the residents of Beaufort, of Doraville definitely deserve it. I would say that ideally, in my mind, that perhaps maybe the old Kmart site would be a great location, or if not, Tilly Mills at the Peachtree Industrial may even be better because of the parking there. However, it does come down to a density, of course, and with any business model, they're certainly going to look at factors in terms of home ownership. Education is another key part because they want to know that their employees and others who are coming to the area, that they support that. So absolutely, I'm in favor of it. What it's going to take for that, we probably have to tap into Home Depot, who is already existing here and has been in the community for quite some time, and using some of their statistics to support it so that we can encourage others to come as well.
Thank you. Gerald?
I agree with pretty much everyone. What I would add to that is how we can take and do some things that are more proactive versus reactive. Instead of waiting for these developers to come to us, let's take the data and use that approach and say, well, what can we do as a city to attract them? Maybe there's new infrastructure, or there's new sidewalks we can put in, or build, have developers come in and develop in this area just to attract those different developers, such as the Publix and things of that nature. In addition to that, I would also add that if we had that infrastructure, we should take advantage of the visibility that we have at Spaghetti Junction. We have one of the busiest intersections of Atlanta, so it's not just the people that live in Doraville, but the people that are stuck in that nightmare of traffic that could stop and say, hey, I need some groceries, why don't I spend my tax dollars here?
Thank you. Tom Owens?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
District 1?
District 1, we just keep talking about grocery stores, this and that, until you get rid of the boarding houses, all this other stuff. Because you're not going to get the quality of people here. But let me tell you what the city council did to me. You don't need a grocery store here because they can't afford it because they're raising my sanitation fee. I got to pay an extra $100. So, you know, if the council keeps raising my taxes, I'm not going to have any money to go to a Kroger if they ever come to Doraville.
Okay,
So until we get rid of the board, you can talk all this fluff, the boarding houses have gotta go. That's number one priority. Cause you go to any of these other cities, there's no boarding houses.
Andy Yeoman, District One.
So Tom kind of stole my thunder. I just want to.
No, we in the same neighborhood, we're friends.
No, I just want to say that, you know, there's been an empty shopping center at the end of my street for at least the last 15 years.
Yeah.
And now there's an opportunity to put 300 apartments, and I heard that case when it came before the planning commission. And I'm not real crazy about 300 apartments being at the end of my street. I'd kind of like to see a retailer, Kroger and Publix, but until we get serious and we get back down to the basics of improving the physical condition of our facilities and our infrastructure and our neighborhoods and our parks, and we make it a desirable place that people want to live and people want to move to, and we clean up, you know, some of these areas, the nicer development that we'll see in Chamblee will come. And we've got to get serious about doing that. Those are the types of things that a city council member can do through policy and through ordinances and legislation. I'm not going to be real successful calling Kroger and asking them to build a grocery store in Doraville, but there are things that I can do every day as a council person.
Thank you. Miss Jessica, District Two.
District Two. This is a frustrating topic for many people here. I get irritated because I have to drive out of Doraville to get anything that I need, that's, you know, my necessities. I get frustrated when, you know, the closest grocery store is only sells like, you know, goat tongue and things, weird things like this. The farmer's market's great for some things, but it's just not what me and my family need. We would like to not have to drive out of Doraville to, you know, pick up our shampoo or cat food or groceries. So I know that in Chamblee, they did issue a bond for, I think, like $400,000 to get Whole Foods to build that there. And I feel like instead of all the bond issuing going on at the GM plant, why don't they get somehow this bond issued for a grocery store to be here to cater to the people? That's what we need.
Thank you. Maria, District Three.
Just to reiterate what everyone else has said about rooftops generate things like a grocery store, another point I wanted to make that is extremely important and is coming up next year is we need everyone to respond to the census, because that census data is used. So we need to get out in the community, and no matter who is in your household, don't be afraid the government's going to come knocking. We need to know how many people we have in the city, because that enables us another bargaining chip to produce to these marketers.
Thank you. Okay, I think everyone got a turn for that question. Here's our fifth question, and I'll start with Tammie, and we'll also go this way. So, Chris, you'll get the final word. Brookhaven became a city around 10 years ago. Their tax base is substantially larger than Doraville. How does Doraville compare? So you can discuss Brookhaven versus Doraville. So, go ahead.
I actually was a part of Brookhaven's formation, and I don't think it's quite 10 years just yet, but totally different in terms of demographics. There are a number of, I think you're comparing apples to oranges. Doraville is one that many people have been here for years. Multi-generational, there are immigrants, there are a number of people who have moved to Doraville, recent, ourselves included, the last 4.5 years, young professionals. So totally different demographics, but in terms of building the city, we certainly have opportunities to do that, and many of the things that have been discussed here tonight, economic development, and other things, wanting national supermarket chain, those types of things come into play. But when we compare ourselves to Brookhaven, I think we do a disservice. Certainly Chamblee is probably most closely aligned to us and started out in that way, and they have definitely made some strides, and so it's time for Doraville to step up.
Thank you. Gerald, District One.
Yes, I agree. Brookhaven and Doraville, it's apples and oranges. They don't really compare. They are a neighbor city, so that I believe with their growth, there are some things that we could take advantage of by having them so close of what they've done right and what they've done wrong. What can we utilize from their studies and their data, and what's working for them to implement in Doraville, and then also how can we improve upon that? I think that's the advantage we could take from that. In those studies, and having Brookhaven, as they call themselves the #1 suburb in Atlanta right now, but they're attracting places like the Atlanta Hawks just built a basketball court and all the new housing that they have. But there's a lot that we can learn from them, and we can utilize that to our advantage.
Thank you. Tom Owens, District 1.
Don't say boarding houses, don't forget that. Keep it in your
President, I
mind,
got a
stay
present
focused.
for you. Go ahead.
Yeah,
The
I've
question
watched
about
Brookhaven develop and even Dunwoody, but Doraville does not manage its money correctly. You know, they're not spending it correctly. They taxes at $1.25. You know, you need to run the city like you run your own personal checking account. And they want all this forced annexation, and people don't want to be forced into a city that's not managing their money correctly. Save your money, spend it properly. We don't care about these dog parks and stuff. That's not. We need a Kroger, not a dog park. Maybe the dog park will have some meat in it for the grocery store. I don't know. But we just need to be more. If we get rid of the boarding houses, the taxes will go up and we have money to spend properly, period.
Thank you. Andy Yeoman, District 1.
Does anybody want a dog park?
4 people.
Okay, well, I got some work to do then, I guess. I'm not running to be the city council person in Brookhaven. I think Brookhaven is unique just as well as Dunwoody is, and Chamblee and some of the other cities. What I can say is that what I hear a lot and from the chatter, even on some of the next door and some of the things, is the city doesn't have any money. And the city spends all its money on the police department. Since we were last in this room in 2007, the tax digest for the city of Doraville has raised $120 million. So that's in 2 years. It's raised can you hear me? It's raised $120 million since we were here in this room in 2017.
Can you speak up?
Sure. Since 2015, when there was a mayor's race, the tax digest has raised over $200 million. So that's $200 million times the 10 millage rate. So the city is doing well in terms of growing and taxing, and certainly they're doing well in raising the taxes, but just increasing the value of the digest and stuff as well. So what's important to answer these questions about how we compare to other cities is the growth, the organic growth that we have from our neighborhoods. Where's that money going and how's it being spent?
Thank you. Jessica, District 2.
I think that Doraville compares to Brookhaven in a way where they don't have the extremely high mill rate that we do. Our mill rate has hit the ceiling. It's at 10. It's ridiculous. We don't have any services for that. We are paying too high of taxes, and the spending's got to stop. Doraville does not have an income problem. It has a spending problem.
Amen.
So that's a big deal with me. They need to stop spending money on private property. It's just let me think here. They can stop leasing the cop cars. There's several things that Doraville can do to improve its money situation. The main concern is, for me, getting the mill rate back down to somewhere that's reasonable, like 7, not 10. It's just growing by the week, it seems. So that's basically how I feel we can compare with Brookhaven. Is with the mill rate, stop leasing cop cars, income problem, not spending problem, spending problem, not income problem, not spending. Sorry. And yeah, that's all I have to say about Brookhaven and us.
Thank you. Maria, District 3.
I think it is difficult to compare our tax base to Brookhaven, especially when you have those homes from the 1920s around the golf course over there. But I was very disappointed in this year's budgeting process. I believe that years past were, you had more community input and community involvement. I accidentally found out about the budget review meeting that was held at the library and ran up there at the last minute. I do think we can do a better job with more conservative spending and getting public input on what the public would like to see where our funds go. I would like to see us replace department heads such as the Parks and Rec director. We haven't had one of those in several years, and I think that is a critical department head that the city needs. So I am for reviewing the budget and tightening up the purse strings and hopefully building back up our fund reserves.
Thank you. Shannon?
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Brookhaven became a city around 10 years ago. Their tax base is substantially larger than Doraville. How does Doraville compare?
Right, absolutely. So I don't think you could have almost two cities on the opposite end of the spectrum. Before I bought my house, I resided in Brookhaven, and the homes that are there now are through the roof. They are mansions, and they are in the 700,000+. even some of the smaller homes that they have are still 500,000 plus. So you're it's not exactly the same tax base that we have. As far as when we talk about our police department, I absolutely 110% can say that yes, I am all for giving more money to our police department. I voted for raising police department pay because they are a value to our city. Our response time is impeccable, and I appreciate the service that the men and women of our police department that they do for us. Of course, there's always room for improvement, absolutely. As far as community input for our budget, absolutely. I think we should always have that every single year.
Thank you. Rebekah, you're District 3 also? No,
Two.
District 2, I'm sorry. District 2, please.
So first of all, I love Doraville. My husband and I moved from Midtown when I was pregnant with our second daughter, and we really could have moved anywhere in the area. And we picked Doraville because, you know, we really thought that there's a mix of people. You can be living next door to a lawyer, next to a construction worker, and across the street from a group of traveling ballet dancers, which actually is kind of my situation, or a musician. You know, so all of these things occur in Doraville, and I think that that's one thing I love about Doraville, the diversity, not just racial diversity, but socioeconomic and ethnic diversity. I think one of the other big differences, and this is a little bit more about what we can do to emulate some of the good things about Brookhaven, we can have a really strong vision as a city council, and we can execute on the plans that we have. We have a downtown development authority that doesn't meet. We even have a urban redevelopment agency that doesn't meet. And by doesn't meet, I mean they meet 4 times a year, and Brookhaven meets every month.
Thank you. Chris?
I have a hard time comparing Brookhaven to Doraville. Doraville's diversity is its strong suit, in my opinion, and Brookhaven is a fairly homogeneous community. I moved 7 years ago to Northwoods because I think it reminded me of the community I grew up in New Jersey. And my wife works down at Georgia State, Chinese language department there. We love utilizing all that Doraville has to offer. I don't think we need to promote ourselves as the next Brookhaven. I think we need to promote ourselves as Doraville. We were a manufacturing town for a while, and now we're not. I think that's a strong place to start, not a weak position to start from.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to come back to budget issues, but first I have a question, and I'm going to start with Tom, and we're going to go this way.
Is this a trick question?
I know you will appreciate this question. Hello, all. Why are you running, and what is your one burning passion?
I'm running because I love Doraville. I love the people. I love the Doraville Police Department. They see me every morning. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and let me tell you something about Doraville Police. The 911 doesn't work. Get that 1000 number. I call them up all the time. There's a lot of good rank and file police officers out there doing the job every day, putting their life on the line. And I'm right there about them. There's a lot of good ones, and I hope we get a new, real good police chief. And but the number, like I said again, I'm not repeating. Gotta get rid of them boarding houses. You spend all that money on Oakwood over here, and that my friends just cuss about that stuff on Oakwood. They come in and say, "Why they mess it up?" I said, "Well, it wasn't broke, so they had to fix it." So you can't have that kind of mentality and think. But I love Doraville, and I fought and bled for this country, and y'all all be proud to have me. Who?
Thank you. Thank you. Gerald Evans, District 1.
Thank you. Gerald Evans, my platform is simple. It's 3 E's. It's economic growth, embracing our diversity, and empowering our seniors. So basically, more of what Doraville has and where we lack. So we stand for community, vitality, and diversity. I just don't always feel that, and I don't feel it's always represented. And that's what I want to bring more to Doraville.
Thank you. Tammie?
Yes.
You're burning issue.
Thank you. My reason for wanting to run for city council for District 2 is simply that there is a lot of opportunity here in Doraville, and quite honestly, I really feel like we're not seeing it. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out, and for us, only after 4.5 years, one of the reasons for moving here certainly was because we saw the potential. And we felt that this was definitely home. We love the diverse culture, we love the diversity, however, it is lacking. And to see the opportunities that advanced in the short time that we have been here, and to see what has happened and occurred in Chamblee is quite astounding. And it's just, it's disheartening, to be quite honest, because I feel we're using our monies to help build Chamblee, and it doesn't feel good. And so rather than be a person who complains, I'm a solution provider, and I'm here to help in whatever way that I can. I really feel that there's a lot of opportunity. Over and over again, we have had many of the residents express their dissatisfaction and wanted to see a change.
Thank you. Chris? Yes, go ahead.
I am running for city council because I see that there's a bit of a synergy between what I do as an architect and what I think city council might need. I think that my work with builders, developers, property managers, tenants gives me a knowledge base that I think the city could utilize, and it's something that I'm sort of passionate about, some civic service. I've tried in the past for some other positions and it hasn't quite worked out, but I feel that Doraville is right on the cusp of becoming something really great, and I think that the previous city council has worked towards that, and it just needs this one final push to become really something quite unique and spectacular within the greater Atlanta area.
Thank you. Rebekah, your burning passion issue?
I'm a very passionate person, so I'm going to try to distill this into one thing. I do feel like we are really in the act of turning the page to the new chapter of Doraville. This is a really exciting time, and in Atlanta, obviously, they've been building the Beltline. The Peachtree Creek Greenway has been coming down into Brookhaven. It's supposed to connect into Chamblee and Doraville. There's a lot of exciting things happening, but I want to make sure that we don't just have the development that displaces the older residents that won't be able to afford to live here, immigrants who have lived here and made this the place that people are like, oh, we love you, hi, this is so great, I love this food, oh, where'd they go, So I think we need to make sure we have this development and that we are having authentic development, but we're not doing it disregarding the identity of the people who worked in the GM factory that have retired here and the people who have created this identity that is nationally renowned. So let's just do it without forgetting who we are.
Thank you. Shannon, District 3.
Yes, so I've decided to rerun because I want to, like I said in the beginning, I want to continue to do things that bring the community together. Like we all know, Doraville is very diverse, and when I first moved here, I kind of felt like there was a little separation between the different cultures. So whether it be making sure that our city is walkable, making sure that my residents, I've got a large venue of residents that walk everywhere in the city, and it's not just by themselves, it's with children in a stroller and one on each side. So making sure that Oak Cliff has larger sidewalks, and making sure that we connect through the Beltline, and like having the events through the Peachtree Creek Greenway, like making sure that we can also connect to our surrounding sister cities is also very important to me.
Thank you. Maria, District 3.
I wanted to run for council again because I wanted to give back to the community again, as I had done in my previous terms. And I guess my burning passion is to experience the smart growth that our neighboring cities have experienced, keeping in place our established neighborhoods and our what we're known for, the historic Northwoods area, but also express an open mind to new and exciting growth. It's right around the corner for us.
Thank you. Jessica, District 2.
I was born and raised here. Doraville is my stomping grounds. I care about what happens here. I'm running because I don't really see anything happening here, and the things I do see happening here aren't necessarily the good things, but there's a few of them, but still, I feel like my experience with the people at City Hall was that I had no communication. They wouldn't return my emails. They wouldn't call me back. I would have to go up there in a wheelchair one day to try and get anyone to give me an answer about something. And I feel like that's a big problem. And if I become your next council person, I will have the open door policy the city needs with the citizens. I will reconnect the citizens to their local government. I feel that's very important, and that's what builds a community and makes it stronger from the ground up. You have to have that. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Yeoman, District 1.
Sure. So it's time to get back to the basics. It's time that we focus on improving the physical condition of our facilities and our infrastructure. And I think too many times the politicians, not just in Doraville, but in general, they're always focused on the next big thing. And the next big thing in Doraville has been the assembly plant for the last 10 to 12 years. And if something ever happens to assembly, that's great. But it's going to happen at the Chamblee site first and eventually make its way into Doraville. In the meantime, we've got to start getting back to the basics of focusing on what makes our communities nice, what makes our communities desirable. It's how many times a day do we have to drive by a blighted property, the Kmart property, or the Eagles building, or something on Beaufort Highway, or any of some of our even Civic buildings here in the city, before we realize that we should probably do something. We should make an incremental step in our own neighborhoods and our own business, and let the developers do what they want to do and what they will do eventually. But there are things that we can do as a city, as our neighborhood groups, and as our local residents to make the community incremental steps in the positive now and in the next 4 years that this council will serve.
Thank you. Okay, this is the last written question. And I will start with Shannon, and let's see, we went that way, so we'll go this way. Shannon and Rebekah. Yes. I'm sorry if I got confused. Okay, well, Maria will be second, and Rebekah will be. Okay. So here it is. It's about the budget. Not being from Doraville, I don't know if the budget is balanced or not, but I'll just read the question. How will you balance the budget? Another tax increase, or what do you think? Balancing the budget. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, what?
How will you balance the budget with another tax increase, or what other matter?
Well, first of all, we can't do another tax increase because we are at the top. We're at 10 mil. So, like I mentioned before, making sure that we get community output into things that's important to them is also important to me. Like we had this year, I think we could possibly, probably do a better job at having the outreach, the notification to talk to our residents and communicating with them that we are having a balance of budget meeting and getting them involved to tell us what their input is. But we all on council work together to collaborate in the budget, and we all don't agree, but at the end of the day, we do what we feel is best for the city.
Thank you. Maria, District 3, balancing the budget.
Well, you have to have a balanced budget because it's required by state law, so it better be balanced.
Speak to the budget.
I think we need to look at our overall spending and again, our staffing issues. Like I mentioned, not having a director for the Parks and Rec, I think is a very important position that needs to be funded. And we need to look at our overall spending. I believe that perhaps some of the recently filled positions could have been filled by part-time personnel, not hiring a full-time employee with benefits. I think we should evaluate that because that's a huge cost savings. It's not just a salary, but it's 40% on top of the salary for benefits. So I'm all about looking at the budget again and making cost cuts where we need to be. I had to do that when I was interim mayor in 2011. So it's a tough job, but sometimes you have to do it. I'm not in favor of raising our taxes again.
Thank you. And now to Jessica.
Oh, okay. Well, as I said before, the mill rate has hit the roof, it's hit the ceiling, it's at 10. I think that needs to be brought back down. A lot of the budget problems that I see that I feel are important, need to be addressed, is no more bond issuing on the GM property. We can't continue to do that. It doesn't make any sense to me. And you've got too many cooks in the kitchen. We've got a CID, a DDA, a TAD, a URA. These groups never even meet. And there's no oversight going on here. There's no reporting done. If you do an open records request, you can't get any documentation on it because it's not there. It's not know what's going on to be able to balance the budget when we can't find these reports anywhere. It's just not being done. There's no oversight, and it's not good. And as I said at the city council meeting before, the city needs to have a forensic audit done by the Attorney General. That's what I feel needs to be done next, to get the budget in check, make sure everything's right, what's going on. People need to know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Yeoman, District 1, about
Sure.
the budget.
So as Maria said, the budget is balanced. It's required by state law, but more importantly, the budget when I moved to the city in 2014 was $11 million. And it's $17 million today. Now there's some SPLOST money and some things, and some new money that's in there as well. But what I don't like to happen, and what the professional staff are trained to do when they get to their elected officials, is they're trained to tell everybody that the city doesn't have any money, and if you cut anything at all, you're going to slash services in the city. So I researched that. In 2015, we spent about $7 million on our police department. Last year, we spent about $7 million on our police department. It was up about $100,000, and I think most of that was salary and benefits. So when the staff comes back and they say that, well, if you cut $1, we're going to lay off a police officer, that's a false promise. It's a false hope, and it requires council members that are inquisitive and that look at those numbers and ask the tough questions and can see through some of that. How much time do I have? Just the last, stop? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
You had about 4 seconds.
Tom Owens, District 1, about the budget.
The budget, I don't go to council meetings, but I watch a video, and the recent one, the city council, we don't have a garbage contract. And it seems like the council is going in a different direction. And by the end of the year, we're not gonna have a garbage contract. And, it's bad. If you can't get a contract, you know, what's the sense of talking about a budget? And another thing about the budget is that council people is gross incompetence when they say, we can't balance a budget, but let's go out here and force annex people into the city so we can get more money to spend. That's like telling Sherman's coming to your town. They get mad as hell. They don't want to get annexed into Doraville.
Thank you. Gerald, Evans, District 1, about the budget.
So I did a study of the budget as well, and I noticed that from 2017 to current, even the proposed budget for 2020, it's pretty much almost what they said, the same amount of money that's spent every year with a slight incremental increase. I don't know if that's necessarily good or bad, but I do feel that there should be some stagnation going on, where if we want to increase our parks and recs, if we want to hire, to Rebekah's point of someone that's in charge over there, maybe we should increase park and recs and decrease from somewhere else. But it seems like it's the same amount for the last 3 or 4 years in a row, and I'm not sure why that is, but that's something I just want everyone to know, that it's about the same budget every year with just more money being spent in every department.
Thank you. Tammie, District 2, about the budget.
I think that one of the conflicts here is more about the transparency and communication, and that people are just not aware of where the money is being spent. And usually that's always the break, you know, the point of where people are discontented because you're not sure where your tax dollars are going, where our tax dollars are going. So I think it's more about communication and transparency, making sure, you know, just as speaker spoke about open records, but it shouldn't be that we have to make the request. It should be, you know, common knowledge as to where our dollars are going. We are the taxpayers for the city. Another, you mentioned also as part of the budget about alternatives, and one is in terms of grants. There are a number of grant opportunities that are available, so when you talk about things such as staffing or some of the needs of the city that we'd like to invest in, there are certainly grants that are available for that, and it would be worth exploring that as an option as well.
Thank you. Chris, District 2.
I think it hasn't been brought up yet tonight, but I think one of the first big items that the new city council may face is the selection of a new city manager. And it provides, and I know that it'll be guided by the current city council potentially, or may be resolved by then, but I think it is an opportunity to hire somebody who's a very experienced budget expert. I run a small company, Andy runs a very large company. I'm not an expert on budgets, but it would be great to have either an outside auditor or somebody who is super familiar with how cities are run to really provide some new input and some new sort of outside look in. And I think a new city manager is really going to be a good opportunity for that.
Thank you.
Well, I'll just copy everyone. No, I agree with a lot of what was said. Choosing a new city manager is gonna be really important. I think one of the things that we really need is regular financial reports monthly during the council meetings. And I think our council meetings need to be a little longer. When I go to the other city council meetings, there is a time for the financial review, what's happening. The DeKalb County School Board every month, what's happening. Their school board meetings go 4 or 5 hours. I'm not suggesting that. But I think ours could go a little longer than an hour and a half. And I think that we need to really, as a council, to other people's points, that we need to be asking questions and not just taking what the city manager is saying as, okay, yeah, we'll just vote and approve this. I think we also need to have budget retreats. I think we need to have an independent audit as well. And then I think that'll give us the outside, unbiased perspective so that we can actually enforce some of these things.
Thank you. And now I think we're moving it.
I think our illustrious moderator is right, and we should now take the questions from the audience, and then the wrap-up should be the very last.
Yeah, we'll have 20 minutes for the wrap-up.
But let's remember, this is professional, respectful. If you wrote a question and we didn't get to it, Mark didn't get to it, you might want to just raise your hand and ask it orally.
Are they timed as well? Yes.
So we'll get, I was thinking, you ask the question, I don't think it's to the, ask a specific person here. And if someone else, another candidate strongly wants to jump in, we'll permit that. But we have, it looks like 40 people here, so we'll try to ask a number of questions. You, sir, are the first. Go ahead.
Good. And I don't need a mic. I live in Doraville. 15 years. Forcefully annexed into Doraville. My question to you guys, because the current board members now, they are known as useless, but they have, you guys have great ideas. Your vision is good. What are you going to do to maintain your vision and not become like the current board?
Sir, I'll ask you, pick one council member.
This is for all the councils.
Well, the problem is it's gonna take like 10. What do you think, like 10, 50?
30 seconds.
Okay, 30
You
seconds.
can pass if you don't have something really
Okay, fine. 30 seconds.
mind-blowing
Let's
to
just
say.
go end to end. Maria?
Yeah. Trying to think of my answer. We can come back.
We can come back to you.
I'll
Go ahead. Tammie?
So mine, to speak to Mr. Ron's question, is making sure that I return and answer every phone call, every email, every text message, everybody that stops by my house to say, hey, you know, I need this done, or can you help me with this? Can you help me get new sidewalks on Oak Cliff Road so that it's safer that I take my kids to Oak Cliff Elementary? Making sure that you have that open line of communication with your constituents is key, because the person that voted you into office is the same person that's going to go up to your house or call you or email you or text you, and it's your job as a council member to make sure you fulfill that role and call them back and answer those needs.
Thank you. Rebekah?
Susan Fracy asked us to have some of our core values, and one of mine is integrity. I'm not making any promises during this campaign or this forum that I'm not going to be able to keep, you know, Lord willing. And the one that I'm always going to be someone who works hard, who's going to meet with people. I currently have community dinners in Spanish, and I had to learn Spanish to have those community dinners. So having community dinners in our communities, different neighborhoods in Doraville. I don't think I'll be able to learn Bengali, but I'll try. But I can really do English dinners very well. So I really want to make sure that I'm engaging, continuing, like Shannon said, responding to emails, all of that, and you have my promise.
Would anyone else like to jump in on this question? Go ahead, Chris.
I think Susan's question about the core values, actually, I sat down and thought about it for about 2.5 hours. It was a really good exercise, and I'm not going to read them out right now, and I might do it as my closing statement, but it really helped me sort of solidify my means and methods of how I not just want to do, proceed as a city council member, but how I run my business, how I raise my child, how I deal with my family. And I just sort of went back and looked at all of the things that I sort of do on a daily basis and what I consider important to me and how that will then translate. So I appreciate that question because it really helped me firm up my sort of belief structure about what I can do. So I'll go into that with detail if anybody later on would like to know that.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next question. Yes, sir, you and the red shirt in the back.
John Lowe, I work for the city, but I also live in the city and grew up in the city. I'm currently charged and tasked with recruiting for the police department. Police departments across the nation are having so much trouble finding good applicants. My quick brief question to you is, how are y'all going to help the police department to serve the citizens better by getting better recruits in? Because I could show you some of the applications and you'd be horrified.
Oh. Were you addressing that to any particular?
I'd like to see who wants to take the ball and run with it, because it's a critical thing facing our department.
And we'll get some.
Like Oprah would say, everybody gets a Tesla. I mean, I know that we're competing at lower costs, but I think Doraville is a very exciting place to live and work, and I think the police department offers an opportunity for a lot better education for young police officers here than it would in a more quaint, quiet town like maybe Brookhaven or Chambly. I think the opportunities are there for growth and learning, and finding officers that are eager to really get out and do a job is something Doraville offers them. It's not a desk position, it's something exciting.
Any of you folks over here at this corner?
Tammie's been here.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I think one of the things that perhaps we can do in that area is in terms of incentives for the police officers. Doraville, there are certainly opportunities here. When we talk about stabilizing, the residency here and having more home ownership, those are the types of things that are attractive to not only police officers, to public servants, and to others. And so certainly if we work within a community, and that's a great way to build our home ownership, stabilize it. We talked earlier about wanting to have a national supermarket chain or those types of things. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for how stable is this community? Do we have a community of all renters, or do we have more homeowners? And certainly by offering that as an incentive to our police department, to other public servants, would be a way to go.
Thank you.
I think the police are trying to do a better job of community involvement. I actually personally went to Chick-fil-A. They had coffee with a cop, and I was the only representative there from Doraville. So, it's things like that they're getting involved in, and I would love to promote and be more a part of. Like, I think there's a charity softball game coming up against Dunwoody, and then they had boxing matches coming up. So there's things like that people either don't know about, that could be promoted more, and people can go out and attend and get to know the police officers face to face, take pictures, and just have a relationship with them. I think things like that would attract more people to be more comfortable with the police, because sometimes they can be a little intimidating. But I mean, that's just across the nation. So having that transparency, it will attract more, even diversity. We have one of the most diverse areas of Atlanta. To have a more diverse police force would be great too.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to Andy. Would you like to speak to that question?
So Ed, I think your question was on recruitment, is that correct?
Yes, what are we gonna do to bring better applicants?
Correct. So what I will say, if you're asking this question to candidates, it sounds like maybe you're a little frustrated with it, and I'm not gonna, if I'm elected to the city council, I'm not gonna try to be the police chief, I'm not gonna try to be the code enforcement officer. So what I would do is I would commit to, not just myself, but collectively with my future council mates, to actually meet with yourself and the chief and some of the command staff to find out what it is that these applicants are checking that the city's not doing. It doesn't make sense for us to come up and say, well, we'd like to offer free college tuition or whatever, when the officers don't want that. They're working 60 hours a week just to get the overtime to make the salary they need to feed their family. So I couldn't do that.
Thank you. Any other one else that want to? We'll get to you. Go ahead.
I think you're trying to recruit from the real young labor pool. You need to look at retired people, older people. Older people make better police officers because they're easier to make the right decisions. You hire these younger ones. Y'all recently hired some young ones. I'm a senior citizen. I'm walking down the street. They stop me, ask me what I'm doing. I said, I live here. I'm getting my exercise. so, but you need, it's saying, you're hiring these young people, go out there and anybody walking, they're fair game. That's why you're having a recruiting problem. And another thing about your police, you need to have police and get the politics out of the police.
Thank you, Jessica. You want to take this?
Officer Lowe, I think one thing that we could do is possibly have not like 8 to 10 code enforcement officers or however, it's a big number. The city is not that big. I believe the city only would need 2 code enforcement officers to thoroughly cover the area they need and keep them on point, especially if we got the building inspectors full-time one here in Doraville. And with all the budgeting out of that compensation, I think it would add up if we didn't have so many code enforcement to have maybe that go to higher pay raise for the officers here, better pay. That would definitely give them the incentive to want to be here, and that money speaks, money talks. So I think that would be an idea to look at.
Thank you. I believe we have time for another question. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I'm a citizen. I'm not just a timekeeper, and I have lived in Doraville since 1974. Our sons were born and raised here. Our youngest son is Ashley Barker. He's a teacher at Westlake High School, and he's working on his second master's in economics, and he's done studies on Doraville. And even when he was a senior at Cross Keys in 1999, the year he graduated, and they did demographics, they said, quote, he said, Buckhead would be coming this way. But he also did a study on the safety of Doraville. We have, in case you don't realize it, one of the safest cities around, and part of that, most of that is to our police department. We have one of the most outstanding police departments in the South, one of the most outstanding SWAT teams in the South. And it's good enough that the governor picked somebody to be the insurance commissioner. So my question is, when you are elected, and this is for anybody that would like to answer, what will you do to support the police department so that they can bring in, they do need younger people that are more capable of taking control. Older people can't chase crooks, so we need to pay them more money. What can we do to raise the salary? And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take so much time. It's a burning subject with me.
Another police question. I'm going to ask Shannon.
I will gladly take this question. I will sit up here all day, every day, and say our police are top-notch in the nation. Our men and women that work for us are phenomenal, and I am so proud to say that, yes, I voted to increase their pay because they deserve it. And when Officer Lowe stands up here and says, what can we do as a city to have the recruits come to us instead of Brookhaven, instead of Chamblee, you guys, we have got to increase their pay because they deserve it. I heard somebody say, well, if they're working 50 hours a week, then they will already have that pay. That is not fair. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to them. And I would never ask an officer to work 50 plus hours a week just to make the surrounding cities matching pay.
I think we had another comment on that. Go ahead, Tammie.
Again, as stated before, I just know that in that area, when you're talking about employees as a whole in recruitment, you have to go to what's going to make sense in the environment to stay competitive. And certainly, what's first and foremost at the top of the list for most people, it's always about where most of your dollars go, it goes towards housing. It's about your overhead, where you're living. The other part for recruitment's sake is also about education. A lot of times it's not so much that people don't necessarily want to come here to Doraville. A lot of people have moved to Gwinnett because school systems for their children. And if school systems were better here, I know that's a DeKalb issue, but if school systems were better here, this would probably be the destination stop for a lot of homeowners. They're not happy with sitting in traffic an hour and a half going up 85 North. We see it every day. They would much prefer to be here and use MARTA and have more amenities. So there are things that we could do, and certainly to your point about the recruitment aspect of it, I think if we focus on some incentives, namely about the housing and also about the school systems.
Thank you. Sir, I think you felt you wanted some more answers to your questions.
Well, yes, because half of the county.
Go ahead and restate your question, and we'll invite the others to.
The original question is, the current board is useless. What are you gonna do with your vision that you have for Doraville as a whole, seeing that it's very diverse? What would you do to keep your vision alive and not get caught up in the corruption and all the mess that is currently going on now?
Sir, which board are you talking about?
Council. The council.
Oh.
Well, I kinda agree with you. You need to, if you let me, I'm gonna drain the swamp. Somebody's gotta do something. You know, just keep talking about it and walk around with signs, it's not gonna get it. You gotta drain the swamp, get some new blood in there, new thinking. If everybody's thinking alike, nothing's getting done.
I think that's an inappropriate question, I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
You're saying these people are corrupt, if that's, do you
No,
wanna
no,
restate
no,
that?
I didn't say corrupt.
Oh, I thought you said there was corruption.
No, ma'am.
Useless, useless,
Yeah, I use,
useless?
useless.
And then you followed it with corrupt.
You know what, let's take this, there'll be time after the closing statements, you'll have a chance to follow up on your question. I think we have one more question here.
I have a statement.
Go ahead.
I believe that Mr. Ron here is trying to express, he might not have chosen the correct words, okay? I might not choose the correct words. I think what he's trying to express is how are these people that are asking to be elected, how are they gonna be true to their word and not get caught into what everyone else is trying to do?
Well, let me, I
And my name is
appreciate your,
Angela
I
Fleury.
appreciate your clarification, and I think when we come to the closing statements, we'll ask each candidate to speak to your question, which I think you both expressed now very clearly. Is there another question, and I think we have time for just one or two more, on a specific issue? I believe I saw your hand up first, miss. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Shanice Pedersen. I recently moved to Doraville in April. I live in Winter Chapel. And my question is to Gerald and to Shannon. I just spoke to Rebekah briefly about this. I'm concerned about the walkability in Doraville. It's dark. There's a lot of older people that are walking through my neighborhood, and I don't think it's safe. We have the police that live in that neighborhood. They're doing a great job, but I'm concerned someone's gonna get hurt. And I know that we need to work with Georgia DOT and things like that, but how can you cooperate with the surrounding area so we can make this city safer? Thank you.
Who
I'll
would
take
like
that one
to-
first.
Go ahead.
I appreciate your question and welcome to the city of Doraville. We're glad that you're here. So I too, my residents, like I mentioned before, my residents on my side walk. Most of them do not have more than one car, and so they are walking mostly everywhere, even taking their children to school. So what I brought to council was making sure that we were able to widen the sidewalks, especially on Oak Cliff Road, because there were some that were broken and dilapidated. There were some that were non-existent, and it was dangerous for everybody walking by. So making sure that we have things to, thank you, Rebekah. Making sure that we have the tools that we can to listen to our residents and widen the sidewalks. That is key to me, making sure that our residents are safe. And also just listening to what the voice of the community needs. Because if the census is that we need more sidewalks, then that's what we need to give to our residents.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Maria to speak to that also if she wishes.
I had constituents mention to me how dangerous that Winter's Chapel is. And we have speeding there, and we've got to have, I believe, better crosswalks to all of those apartment complexes and to the townhome community. And if there's a lack of lighting, then we need to work with Georgia Power and get that rectified as soon as we can. But it's something that's got to be taken care of, because we can't have safety issues. I was driving somewhere the other day, and I didn't even see this man walking in the road because he was wearing dark clothing. It was in a dimly lit area, and I had to swerve around to miss him. And no driver wants to be in that position either, because it's scary for a driver also. So we've got to work with Georgia Power and see if we can improve the lighting also.
I think we have time for one.
I need to respond to that. So there's certain funds allocated for sidewalks that just simply hasn't been spent. And then there's a backlog of sidewalk areas that have been asked for time and time again. So to your point, I know Winter Chapel is a dangerous area. I'm in District 1. It also extends over to the Tilly Mill area, and there's no sidewalks there. I have to walk my dog in the street basically just to get out of my neighborhood. So I understand your point, and thank you for bringing it up. But to that point, I would like to address that. I would like to focus on getting those funds, pushing that initiative forward. Sometimes things are held up. I'm currently on the planning commission, and sometimes we talk about the same thing over and over, and we haven't made a decision to vote on it. And I think those are some of the same issues that the council is having. And I would like to push those initiatives forward so we can get things rectified sooner, and that way we can get things implemented in the city faster.
Did anyone else here want to speak? Go
I'll
ahead.
just say this, Northwest was designed to be walkable. They actually have right-of-ways between the houses there that, some of those houses have actually kind of built over it. I guess they just assumed that it was their property, but the construction was actually put in the right-of-ways. And it's just been kind of neglected and kind of just, nobody's really paid attention to it with things like that going on. So yeah, it was designed to be a walkable neighborhood. I know it doesn't have sidewalks, but like I said, they had cut-throughs. It was designed for integrated shopping, walking to the schools that are there. And as I said, the city just has allowed people to kind of build over these things and not really enforce what's going on in these right-of-ways. So that is a problem. But yeah, it was designed for walkability, and I know it's kind of hard to tell, isn't it? Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question before closing statements. We've got two questions here.
Susan, this will be quick. I would like to have all of you, by show of hands, show us, if you all could, just by show of hands, and once we've counted, that's it, we go on to the next question. How many of you are willing to commit to actually communicate with us constituents by phone, reply to emails, in some way, in good faith? Not that you have to respond, within any kind of deadline, but that you will share with us what your views are, what your logic is when you get up there. You don't have to agree with me, just explain.
I think we have a show of hands. I'd like to call on this gentleman for the last question.
Okay, this is for everyone. Could you tell me of an experience, an epiphany, a special thing that happened to you in this city that you decided the light bulb went on, I'm gonna run for city council? Was there a special thing that happened? It might have been a traffic stop, it might have been your dog got ran over. What was that special moment where you decided this is the thing you wanted to do?
Go ahead.
Well, there was a stormwater issue in my house, and I went to the city and I tried to get them to do something about it. We pay our stormwater tax, and basically what happened was this easement that exists in the back of my property has been ignored, overgrown, and now that some things have occurred on it, that the rock's been removed from the drainage easement, there's nothing there, it's been flooding the backyard. I went to the city and tried to get someone to help me out with this, because again, we do pay our stormwater taxes. And I emailed every single council person, I went up there personally, I went to council meetings, I called, nobody would return my calls, nobody would write even an email back, the current council. And that is my reason for running, because you cannot operate a city that way, where you're just ignoring people, some people, but other people you're gonna, there's no easement there and you're gonna go ahead and just, work on their private property. That's wrong, and it's not the way to run a city. So.
Thank you. I think we have would anyone else one or two additional responses? Go ahead, Chris.
I have those obvious answers, but it was the birth of my now two-year-old son. Tammie brought it up. We need better schools, and other communities have very loud voices that are fairly united, and it is a DeKalb school board issue, not necessarily a Doraville issue, but there's some leadership there that I think can happen. And I want to see him grow up in a wonderful, sort of safe community that I grew up in, with good walkability, and just a really good sense of community. And I think Doraville can be that place. So that was sort of my motivation to run.
Go ahead, Rebekah.
So I'm currently a high school teacher, but I was working with my students on advocating for, I was trying to get them to care about their community. And they put together all these plans. Hey, we need more sidewalks. We need to improve code enforcement in our apartments. We need, all these ideas. And I'd never really been going to council meetings, as of 5 or 6 years ago. And I started going, and I didn't realize, literally no one went. And you're on first name basis with the mayors and the city councils, and you would advocate for something, and then you'd see something happen. So I'm a big believer in local government and making a difference in the community that you live in. And if you plant yourself in a community for a long time and you set in deep roots, you're able to be there for decades and really become a part of the neighborhood and be a part of its flourishing. And so in that moment where I realized just how involved local government is in our daily lives, that's when I realized I wanted to do that with my life.
I think now we are at the point in the evening where we'll need to do the closing statements. And each candidate will have 2 minutes. So I'd like to start. I was going to say you, but
I started the whole thing off.
Okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, I
Go ahead,
can,
and we'll
it's,
go to
my,
you.
my closing statement's not long, I've done a bunch of, yeah. Basically, you guys have heard my reasons for running this entire evening is that I've lived here my whole life. I feel like the people need to be treated better. There needs to be open lines of communication, open door policies, people need to respond. I mean, they are getting paid to be there, but, it makes you wonder sometimes what are they getting paid to do, at least in my experience with it. So, you have to have communication, you have to respond to your people, and you've got to take care of people. You need to, if there's a problem, they're paying their taxes, they're doing their thing, you can't just ignore some people while blatantly, blatantly ignoring them and helping some others. I feel like that's, being a big disconnect with the citizens and City Hall, and it needs to change. Again, I'm a longtime Doraville resident, and I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy?
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Crawfords for hosting this tonight, and the audience for sitting in those comfortable chairs for the last 2 hours. Looks uncomfortable. Again, I grew up in a town of about 1,000 people. They had a municipal water department, we had a municipal sewer department, we had a municipal cemetery, we had a volunteer fire department. When it snowed, they plowed the snow. When it was trash day, the city employees picked up the trash. And when you died, they dug your grave, which is true. And so the question that was asked earlier about why are you running, it's time that we get back to the basics of good service delivery and governance in the city. That's why I'm running. I'm not going to be here with a bunch of flashy things that I want to do. I would like to have a dog park.
Which is going to be first, Kroger or dog park?
Whichever one the neighborhood wants. But at the end of the day, we've got to get back to the basics and deliver the services and listen to the residents of all different, in every neighborhood, not just the neighborhood that I live in. And I look forward to doing that. From a standpoint, it's time to get, we've got a $9.4 million SPLOST. We've not paved a single road with that. We've got over $2 million that are in that SPLOST that the council just now is getting around to doing. I'm not blaming the council for that. There has been a lack of leadership within the Public Works Department. Some unfilled positions that are finally filled. So there's a lot of work to do in the city. I'd be honored to have your support. What I'd like for you to do is I'd like to ask all of you for your support and to go home and leave this meeting tonight and ask your neighbors as well. Because I really would enjoy the opportunity to serve the city, and I thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tom Owens, District 1.
I know y'all glad, aren't you? This is the last one. It's an honor to run for this. I've done 3 things in life that a lot of people on this board have never done. I served in Vietnam, in the military. I served on a jury trial and a vote. And to do those 3 things is your civic duty. And it's my civic duty to run. Whether I win or not, the issues need to be talked to. Do we want to be an Amazon city or a General Electric city? You got to promote the city. There's a lot of things that are wrong. You know, if everybody's thinking alike, nothing's getting done, what George Patton said. And we just sick. I'm sick of it. You know, people make fun of me, but you know, if it gets done, it gets done. I'm proud of my city. You know, when I've been here in DeKalb County since 1960. The very first McDonald's right down here on Beaufort Highway. It's not there anymore. But what's so sad is when Kmart can't even survive in Doraville, and it went bankrupt. But there's a lot of issues. And getting back to the boarding houses, when I have called up code enforcement in the past to complain about something, even now on my street, when the code enforcement go there, the Doraville police come out there and say, Owens, you're complaining again, they don't like it. The Doraville police shouldn't come to me and accuse me of filing a complaint against a boarding house. They need to enforce the law. And there's a major leadership needs to be changed at the police department when they have that kind of mindset. And I take pictures, there's, you know, I tell the truth with my pictures. And lead follow, get out of the way, and I'm hoping to drain the swamp. I'm just sick of it. You know, I want to be proud of Doraville. I fought for this country and bled for it, and I'll live anywhere I want to. Who?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gerald Evans.
Thanks again for having me. I appreciate y'all sticking around for these last 2 hours to do this. Basically, I'm running because I am Doraville. I'm an unrepresented voice in the city that really hasn't been heard from a lot. I do a lot of things in Atlanta in the past times because there wasn't a lot for me to do. I consider myself a millennial. I'm just on the cusp of that. But it's not a lot of activities happening in the city. So I would like to change that, and I think a lot of you all would as well. And it's time for something new. It's time for something different. If we continue to do the same thing, we're going to get the same results, and there's a definition for that. And I know we're none of that. So I want to make sure that with this vote for me, I'm going to bring the communication that you so desire. I'm going to bring the transparency that you want to see. I'm going to be me. If I've knocked on your door, we've had a conversation, you know, I'm true to my heart. I'm true to my word. So that's why I'm here. That's why I'm running. I'm ready to see a change in the city. We have a great opportunity here to do something amazing. The surrounding cities, our neighbors have already done it, and we can simply take advantage of that. There's something that we can, being an optimistic person, well, I'm not looking at it as a negative. That's something we can take advantage and learn from of what they've done wrong, what they've done right. How can we improve upon that? And this is the time for us to do that. And it's time for something different, and here I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammie?
Yes. Good evening again, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Again, my name is Tammie Bailey Folks. As stated, I am not a millennial, more the other M, mid-age, believe it or not. However, we, have come here to Doraville. This is home ownership number 3 for us. So we downsized, and we could not have think of a better place to be than to be here in Doraville. Initially, in looking at where we wanted to move to, we had a number of things to consider. And one of the key factors, of course, was about just the sheer location. But the other part of what I shared with my husband was that I saw the potential here. And I was excited about what I heard at the time when we moved almost 5 years ago. And that was hearing that there was going to be new development. And in that period of time, we waited patiently, as many of you have. And we looked and also went to the meetings, listened, sat at home, and watched some of the sessions, council sessions, asked questions, had some private meetings, and still waited patiently. And even with that, we still did not see the changes. We are seeing some communication now. However, people that are at a point of where they're not very trustful, and that's unfortunate. We really want to see the change occur. I know that this council, I believe, with all who are here, that they're true to their word, and that we plan to deliver. This is not the same group of people who you may have encountered before. The timing is now. People are ready to make the changes that are necessary to move us forward. We have given enough money and time and effort to other cities, such as Chamblee. Our dollars continue to build those cities, and we have to put an end to it. So I encourage you to take a good look at all of us here. We're willing to work together, and many of us are working on other committees, planning committees and others. And so you talk about DDA and some of the others, and we plan on making those things come back into fold, and that we're going to open that, communicate that openly to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Christopher?
I think I'd like to read my core values. I'll work through this quickly, but it kind of sums up who I am as a person and how I think I can lead. Number one, equality and equity should be at the forefront of all decision making. Votes need to be for the good of all Doraville residents and not just special interest groups or businesses. Sustainability and green thinking should always be used in planning for Doraville's future. Always think in the long term, even when the decision seems to only affect the short term. Number three, each council session is a learning experience. I may have expertise in architecture and related fields, but I'm not an expert in everything. listens to all sides before reaching a decision, employ both logic and empathy when making a decision. Number 4, don't be afraid to admit a lack of knowledge or a mistake. Be humble in knowing what you don't know. Ask for clarification on matters when necessary so that decision-making is as informed as possible. Number 5, this is an elected position and my job is to serve the community at large. Stay connected to the residents and seek out their input on decisions that directly affect them. Stay accessible so that they can reach out to me when an issue arises. While I won't be able to make everybody happy all the time, I can at least take the time to listen and learn. And number 6, doing what is right and doing what is easy are not usually the same thing. Never take the easy way out unless it's also the right way. So I think that sort of sums up who I am as a person and how I sort of aim to lead. So,
Thank you, Rebekah.
Hi, I'm, again, Rebekah Cohen Morris, in District 2. So my dad's a Jewish New Yorker who converted to Christianity and married a New Zealand immigrant and then became a Republican, and then moved to Barrow County from New York City, where I'm from a really crazy background. I speak Spanish because I grew up in a neighborhood where most people didn't look like me. They either spoke Spanish or, you know, it was definitely an interesting upbringing. When I moved to Doraville, I knew that this was the place for me and for my husband and for our kids, and it's the community I want to grow old in, the community I want my kids to grow in, and the community I'm trying to get my parents to move to. The community here is amazing. From everything from our senior citizens, luncheons they have every month, to the activities at the library for the kids, to the Parks and Rec department. And there are a lot of things that we can improve in these areas. It's not all bad. I mean, we're running for a council because we want to improve things, but it's not like it's just been horrible, so now is our time and we're going to make everything better starting today. We are going to make things better. But there's so much here that we've already had people for the last few decades pour into this community. And as a city council candidate, I want to make sure that I build on those successes, that I learn from the past mistakes, and that we all move forward together. As I do this, I'm using the lens of servant leadership. And it's something that I've heard a long time. It was taught to me through my parents and other leaders in my life. But if you really, truly serve the community and communicate with them in a way that puts them first and not your own interests, and you do it with competence, discernment, and discretion, and excellence, we're going to be headed in the right direction. I hope you vote for me November 5th, and I have a meet and greet at Contrast Brewery tomorrow night, and there's more information back there if you want to.
Thank you. Shannon?
So again, my name is Shannon Hillard, District 3 representative and candidate. So I'd like to continue the progress that we've made in the city to move forward. My background, I've got 2 children, and when I decided to move to the city, it's because it was diverse. My husband is Vietnamese, and so my children are half Vietnamese and American, and so that was very important to me. Making sure that we keep the city moving forward by staying connected to our surrounding cities, whether that be through trails, the Peachtree Creek Greenway, and other biking trails. That's also important to me. And it's important that I hear from my constituents. I feel like I've knocked on about 90% of your doors, and we've all had conversations about what you'd like to see different in the city and how you feel things are progressing. And I express that you guys continue to reach out to me. I appreciate your input and your phone calls, and I'd like for you to continue to do that by electing me November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria?
Well, this is exciting to me, having been on council before, to see all the new faces. And it's an exciting time that we've got a lot of new members of the community that want to be involved in the city. So thank you for that and taking that big step to volunteer to run for council. I promise to serve again with integrity. I always did my homework and always came to the meetings prepared. Some council members told me I asked too many questions, but I'd rather have answers to the questions before I make a decision than just go in there and just agree with everyone. I want to know why we're making decisions and what the outcome of those decisions, what the effect of those decisions are going to be. I would like to see more community events. We seem to have trailed off on those a little bit. I was mentioning to some members of the art community, we had Doraville Days where we had an art competition for students from the neighboring schools, and we had set up a makeshift art gallery in City Hall and displayed the children's works just like they were in a museum. And that was a very important community outreach, because to see the face on those children was worth millions. So I'd like to see us to go back to that and have more community events, have more community events involving the children, the neighboring schools, because I feel like that we are so detached from Cross Keys High School because it's over 10 miles away. There are 4 other high schools closer to our community than Cross Keys. So I think we need to work harder to communicate with our students that are so far away from home in their high school studies. So I would appreciate the opportunity to serve the community again. And it's, whether you vote for me or anyone else up here, please just get out and vote. We historically have a low voter turnout, so please, every vote does count in this election. Thank you.
And don't forget the census.
Before we conclude, Susan has an announcement. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, let's have a round of applause for all of you.
Together.
Yeah.
And Ben for keeping the clock running. He had that in his telephone.
And thank you all of you for coming out, and I think this shows all of us how interested people really are in city events. There are city council meetings and there are planning commission meetings, so actually many of us are on the planning commission. So thank you so much for your input and your patience and for coming out tonight, and good luck to all of you. You all, the fact there are so many of you is very heartening to me. And we'll be doing this again in 2 nights, so I invite you all to come back. It will be the mayoral candidates up there. So hope to see them. Thank you.